Hello everybody, this is Coco here, and we are going to do a start to finish faux texture nature paper. Well, it'll have some true elements in it. And I'm going to use this craft paper. I am falling in love with this as much as I love the linen. And I thought I would start first with showing you what I do with the glue. I've got this simple Amazon Basics schoolroom glue, and I do a ratio of like 1/3 glue, 2/3 water. So I put a little fill line in my little vessel here. And my goal is to make the viscosity about as thin as milk. So it doesn't hurt to have distilled water in your craft room. I need more. Gotta go milk the distilled water cow. My husband does the refilling of waters around here. So that is my simple solution. And if you've got just regular Elmer's glue or Dollar Tree glue, I think it's PVC glue. I think that's all this is. It's nothing fancy. It's not a tacky glue. And you just want to give that a good stir. I wanted you to see I use a wide vessel. Makes it easier to stir. I probably could transfer it to a nozzle bottle and do pouring from a nozzle, a little bit more accurate, but this is working for me. So what I'd like to do is keep it as simple as possible so we don't have to go out and buy lots of things. This is actually a silicone spreader. I think they're in the makeup department at the dollar store. I've seen people use brushes. And while I'm on that, the folks I've been studying, we each have a different way we attack this, but I would like to do a shout out to Natasha over at Treasured Books. First of all, I've thoroughly enjoyed her. She has an organized way of teaching, and she lets you take screenshots. You don't have to pay for her lessons, and I'm going to link her. And she's just got a lovely accent, a fantastic personality. She's got a video on there a little bit more about her, which is hilarious. Great comedic timing. So I'd like to do a shout out to her, but what I'm going to do is point you over to her. I'll put her link in because she's got a totally different method. But I borrowed some ideas from her, and from that, all this creativity was born. I didn't know I had it in me. And YouTube will queue up videos they think I might be interested in. I've gone to other channels and checked out what they do with this method, and everybody's got something different. So I'm going to encourage you to educate yourself, because maybe there will be something they do that is more akin to your personality or your creative flow and your artistic aesthetic. Maybe you don't care for garish colors. So I'm going to put a little bit more down. So you saw what I did is I poured some glue straight on the mat, and that anchors the paper. But what you want to do is start from the center and work your way out to the corners to anchor. And I call this my Hail Britannia because it's the British flag. So if you do that, then it's easier to look at this as a quadrant. You want to be thorough and get it all wet. Sometimes it doesn't look moist, but you've hit it with the glue. Then I go onto this quadrant, and pretty soon that'll soak up the glue, capillary action. And I like these spreaders versus the brush. First of all, you don't have any cleaning to do. And, glue and bristles, I don't know how hard that would be to get it out. But I find that they're gentle, and there's a little dip, concave dip in there. I can actually use this as a mini scoop too and drop glue where I need it. So I'm finding far less shredding using a spreader. And I stick with a little guy, $1.25, you can't beat that. Okay, so my first thing I do is I start with some paint. And I'm going to work with pink because I've got an order for pink. So I put light spritzes, but I can also do a heavy spritz. And you see all that glue can make it move. You can treat it like an acrylic painting. And if I was patient, I could probably let layers dry and try different, effects. Right now it just kind of all melds together. Then next, I introduce an underlayer of herbs and spices. And there's seeds in here, some freeze-dried coffee. And if you're doing any sort of notebooks, nature notebooks, sketchbooks, Edith Holden, these are perfect. Now I'm going to go in with some of my dried parsley. I flattened this, and there's a video on that. That'll be in the queue or the playlist. And usually I break up these pieces. I'm going to leave some of these a little bit bigger. And I do like the stems. Let me put that bad boy right there in case he's on the front cover. Okay, now I also use dill. And I love the feathery fronds of dill. Isn't that beautiful? And what I've noticed with dill is sometimes it does interact with the moisture in the paper, and it halos out. And you know what the color of a pickle is, right? Kind of that neon green. So it halos out in a chartreuse color, if it does in fact halo. Sometimes it doesn't. So I think that's plenty of herbs going on there. Okay, next I like to lay threads. I don't know if you can see the threads. And sometimes they'll pick up the paint and they'll look like a little pink thread. But I've pretty much found it doesn't matter what color thread you use. For example, I was just using old, this is antique thread that's, when it's that old, sometimes the cotton breaks while you're sewing. So I just repurpose it here. Nobody's going to be testing the strength of this with the paper. And that disappears into the paper. So you kind of see how quickly this builds. Let me put that more into frame. Okay, now, what other things can we add? I've been experimenting with different types of flowers, and I found that these deconstructed silk flowers from the Dollar Tree are doing very well in this situation. I just kind of snip the petals. They'll add a nice soft, when it dries, touch under the rice paper effect. You'll see a subtle look. Now here is a paper flower, and I rip those and stick those in there. They do a really good job too, because sometimes they absorb the paint. And let me maybe introduce, I haven't tried a purple yet. Let me try purple. They're a little bit dimensional, so I think I'll cut that down a little. And you don't need much, just a hint. Okay, there's that. Now, I think I'll add some teal threads in there. I like to snip it down. And it's going to sound redundant, or not redundant, what's the word? But I purpose to be random. See, you can be purposefully random. All right, now another thing I do is I utilize the edges of the glue paper because it's activatable with the distress inks that are on it. Those will bloom out and become like faux flowers. And they're actually better than the legitimate flowers, because when I use the peony petals, they activate either with the paper or the glue and they turn brown. Let me get a little bit up here. Okay. One thing I have good luck with is chives. They may not show like a pop of color, but they add bump to the paper, and they actually look like lavender. Now, the trick with this is you will not have any aromatics. It will be under a gluey paper. So anything spice and herb-wise or aromatic herb wise gets lost. It gets trapped. Okay, there's that. I'm going to throw in just a few of the peony petals, and I know they're going to turn brown, but they can be part of the design. So you see how quickly just a little pinch comes together. And let's see. Some of the star of the show are the butterfly tea blossoms. You only need this one little guy. It's more than enough. And overnight it blooms into this big blue, deep blue puff. I imagine back in the day, indigenous people who discovered this for dyeing purposes were probably thrilled, like indigo blue is rare, if they were able to get this to stay in their weavings. Okay, now I also have, I don't need more butterfly. This is hibiscus. It dries very woody. You only need a tiny little bit and it'll bloom a magenta. And sometimes it blooms huge, sometimes I think it depends on, like right here, I'm going to put it in a little puddle of glue. Maybe that'll activate it quicker. Okay, so I think we're almost done here. I could add a little bit more pink, but what I'm going to do is lay down a napkin top. It's going to be a little bit bigger than, let's see, this might be more. I'll use this one. This one will require a little bit of scooching to make it fit, but I got a little bit of glue on that by accident. So you just lay it over, and then it's going to shrink and shrivel and wrinkle, so you don't have to do much. You just want to gently disperse this glue. So remember the Hail Britannia move? Start at the center and gently work your way out. You're basically trying to collapse the napkin against the wet surface. And I can tell the quality of this napkin is very, it's easily shreddable, because this was probably one of the middle layers in a napkin. I'll have to cover how I peel napkins in another video. Kind of came up with a quick method. It's done pretty good. So yeah, you want to make sure there's glue on whatever you're using when you go to do the slide. Otherwise, you're just going to catch that paper. It's going to drag and rip, and you don't want to rip. Now, I've got a little puddle here. I can help it along by giving it a gentle lean or tilt. I'm using my Dollar Tree mat. We discussed supplies you can use and economical ways that you can begin playing with these kinds of papers. So all of those videos will be in a playlist: how to press your own flowers and herbs, what different textures I tried that are hits and misses, inventing some new creative techniques in my mind, and some of them are actually working. So I'd like to pass along anything I learn to you and see if you enjoy yourself as much as I do. Okay, now this started to shred, spilling over. I wasn't watching my glue. But what I do is I just crinkle that paper into that glue. Helps absorb it. And this all gets cut away. So this is basically scrap. I'll put some of that down here if it doesn't stick to my fingers. It's sticking to my fingers. All right, so sometimes this just takes a little time, little finesse. You want to kick on some tunes. Sometimes in the middle of the night I'll come out and work on some papers. And when I wake up, I'm amazed at what happens with the capillary action, how quickly these things just bloom into a life of their own. So here's my cheat method. Instead of trimming with scissors, I simply fold that over and scrunch it away from the paper's edge. And that's going to absorb some of that glue. Here comes the cavalry here. That way I'm not adding excess glue. Now typically these take overnight to dry. It depends on how many layers you've added. I've added several layers and it's taken a couple days to dry, and I put it over the air conditioning vent. In the winter, these dried much quicker with the heat. With air conditioning, they just take a little bit longer. We've also been trying an experiment outside, and we have to be careful that the wind doesn't blow things away, and that is a danger. Okay, so now you see I've got a hint of pink on here, and I'm going to use a cleanup cloth and get that glue up there. I can add more at this point too, so what I'm going to do is lift the corner and give that a spritz. Give that a spritz. And you'll see all of this kind of disperses. It looks concentrated.